Jim Walsh is a senior research associate at MIT's Security Studies program, and he's an expert on international security involving nuclear weapons. We asked him if anything of substance can really be achieved at the Vancouver meeting without Beijing.
Well, ultimately, no. Obviously, China has 90% of the trade, of North Korea's trade, and Russia is a very important player in this. But remember, there are UN Security Council resolutions that apply to all the countries, not just China and Russia and the US, but all countries, great and small. And my guess is the focus at this meeting was probably going to be on sanctions coordination. And as you say, it was called before we had this sort of warming of relations. But, until those relations turn into concrete outcomes, some change, then naturally the parties are going to want to hold that sanctions architecture in place until they see that real change is happening. So we're in this awkward middle. The parties are talking, that's good, but we're not quite prepared to give up the entire sanctions architecture that has been years in the making. So there's a bit of a tension there.
Will you be looking for anything specific out of this Canada conference?
Well, I'll be interested to see, as your reporter noted, that in addition to sanctions, there are other topics like diplomacy. So I'll be interested to hear what this multinational gathering comes up with in terms of a statement, how far they go in supporting South Korean diplomacy, what they hope the diplomatic outcomes will be. I think that will be important to watch for.
Let me ask you a question about really the broader picture. It comes, this conference in Canada comes during a time of cautious optimism, if you will. The two Koreas have met face-to-face talking about the Olympics. What do you think is going to happen after the Olympics?
Well, Asieh, that's the million-dollar question. And I can tell you what I would hope for. What I would hope for is that this initial diplomacy paves the way for deeper, more meaningful talks. Now, it doesn't have to focus on nuclear up front. The South Koreans and the North Koreans have lots of topics to discuss, family reunions, return of remains from the war, humanitarian issues. Again, more of that would be positive in terms of building momentum and maintaining communication, which is the best medicine against war by accident or by miscalculation. But eventually, if this is going to stick and lead to someplace, the parties are going to have to be open to talking about nuclear, and in particular, a freeze on testing, nuclear tests and missile tests. And of course, the North Koreans aren't going to do it for free. They're going to want something in return. That will be the challenge. And so I'm hopeful, but I don't think any expert would be surprised if we ended up falling back into the action-reaction cycle of tests and exercises that we've been in for some time.
China from the start has been calling for dialogue, for getting these six-party talks back on track. It seems like an awfully daunting task, Jim, especially when the DPRK has ruled out talking about nuclear issues. And you say it's okay if they don't want to talk about that right now. It doesn't have to be a precondition for future talks.
Yeah, I agree. I've worked on Iran and North Korea now and other topics for 15 years, and I've never seen a situation where putting preconditions works. The way diplomacy works is people show up at the table and everyone's allowed to talk about what they want to talk about or not talk about what they don't want to talk about. But the idea is to begin a process. And if you put roadblocks in front of that, oh, country X, you have to do what I say before I'm willing to talk, that never works. So I do believe that we have to drop preconditions and challenge the North Koreans. You North Korea say you're interested in diplomacy, fine. We're going to show up at the bargaining table. Let's see if you show up and put the pressure on them.
And quickly, Jim, do you see chances of direct negotiations between this administration, the Trump administration, and Kim Jong-un, even a remote possibility?
Well, I think you have to, if only because of the president's statements. In addition to name-calling, he has said on several occasions as a candidate and now as president that he would be open to talking, excuse me, to the North Koreans directly. So, with this president, you can't write anything off. Anything is possible, and that's one of the possibilities.